When I checked my wristwatch, it was past 8 o'clock in the evening. My daughter and husband should have been waiting for me to come home as they never prepare their own meals. When I tried to enter the living room, I heard my daughter, Ruby, laughing and talking in the loudest voice.
It's so tacky nowadays to mend used clothes and sell them again.
Perhaps she was watching TV or something. When I heard my husband's voice next, I felt the blood drain from my body as I didn't think they were talking about me.
Maria is also quite picky, or rather she seems to be missing the point.
Apparently, they were talking about me and my friend Maria. I froze on the spot and had to listen to a conversation I'd rather avoid. The conversation between the two of them was full of criticism about us, and it made my eyes flicker. As I squatted down, my dog, Ken, came and snuggled up to me. The conversation continued, talking about Ken, like he is crossbreed or old, and I heard them even considering throwing away my old sewing machine, which is a keepsake from my mother. I stood up out of the blue. Without saying a word, I took Ken with me and found myself running out of the house. Where was I going? I had no idea. Ken whimpered and sounded uneasy. Would I be able to go back home as if nothing had happened? No, there was no way I could do that. All I knew was that those two were making fun of us. I don't want to go back to the house where those two people are. I don't want to be that miserable. From that day onwards, I never returned to that house. I have several things that I treasure. One of them is my mother's pedal sewing machine, which is my most treasured possession. My mother made many clothes for me with this sewing machine. Inspired by her, I also made clothes for my daughter. She used to love wearing the clothes I sewed, but that was a long time ago. Now that she's a high school student, she rarely wears anything I've tailored. At a cafe in the late afternoon, I was complaining to my friend Maria. She used to say, I like clothes made by my mother the best. But now, when she sees me using the sewing machine, she says I look like a grandmother.
Well, there was a time when you said the same thing, Yasmin.
Maria and I have known each other since high school. Sometimes she digs up things from the past that even I don't remember. Did I? I just said it like I don't remember anything and took a sip of the iced coffee on the table. While she was laughing, she checked all the clothes I'd mended. After graduating from the fabric course at high school, we both continued our studies in the same field at university. Although our paths diverged after graduation, our friendship remained unchanged.
Yes, that is as good as I expected, Yasmin. That's perfect.
I was relieved when she said that to me. The second-hand clothes I mended are lined up in her boutique. After graduating from university, she worked for a major apparel company, gaining expertise in sales and management, and set up her own business.
Ruby is already a high school student, and I wish you'd join me in this venture soon.
She grumbled this time after I handed out the clothes to her. I keep saying this, but my work is more of a hobby, not a full-fledged business. I'm always worried about whether I'm doing the proper job on the clothes you request. She looked bored and replied,
Fine, I get it.
After some small talk and catching up, we parted ways as usual. On the way home alone, I remembered the olden days. Those days at high school and university, when we were busy with assignments, striving to improve. After graduation, I worked for a textile manufacturer and stopped making clothes. I lost my father early on, and I lived with my mother, but she passed away before my university graduation. I was busy working in an unfamiliar environment on my own. A few years later, I married a senior colleague from the same company, and when Ruby was born, I truly felt how important the family was. I started making clothes for Ruby again, just as my mother had done for me, with the pedal sewing machine my mother left me. She was an honest and lovely girl when she was little, though. Arriving home, I sighed as I saw Ruby being a couch potato.
You were saying the same thing, Yasmin.
I just remembered what Maria said to me this afternoon. I wonder if I was also such a lazy daughter from my mother's point of view. If so, her love was truly immense. It's nothing compared to her.
Oh. You're back.
She finally noticed me coming home, but she kept on lying down on the sofa. I couldn't have been this lazy, at least. I told myself that and decided to prepare dinner.
I'm home.
It was around 10 p.m. when my husband Kevin came home. He sat down next to Ruby on the sofa in the living room and loosened his tie.
How was your day?
She said it as she fiddled with her smartphone. The two of them happily chatted, watching TV while I was preparing dinner. Despite not being biologically related, they shared a close bond. We lost her biological father in an accident when she was just 2 years old. For a while after losing my previous husband, Maria introduced me to sewing jobs, and that's where I met Kevin. Ruby was a friendly girl, so she soon got attached to him. It didn't take long for us to remarry. I was worried about losing another precious family member again, but as I found he was a happy-go-lucky sort of person and had thick skin, I gradually eased. His cheerful and bubbly personality made me believe that he would not die easily, which made me feel safe. Then, I've been still living happily as I expected.
Look, isn't the outfit she's wearing cute?
She pointed at a celebrity's clothes on TV.
It's supposed to be trendy this year. We've even been stocking them up at my store.
He is a manager of a popular budget-friendly apparel store.
OMG, can you get it before they sell out?
Their casual conversation annoyed me. It was fine that they both liked new trendy clothes, but I couldn't understand their habit of discarding perfectly wearable items each season, even though they bought them as they liked them. They replaced the new ones so quickly. I preferred wearing the same clothes for years. If their design is a bit old or outdated, I would personalize or mend them myself. I know they both think I am tacky when it comes to the clothes, so I try not to interfere with the way they treat their clothes.
You're so trendy, Ruby.
Don't spoil her too much, honey. Why don't you get a part-time job and buy your own clothes, Ruby? When I talked to those two excited people, the conversation stopped all of a sudden.
It's fine, isn't it? Parents should buy their kids clothes. I can deserve it.
Yeah, girls her age wanna dress up a lot anyway. You should at least understand that.
Suddenly, the two of them were sounding off about me like I was the bad guy, and I was overwhelmed. They won't listen to me anyway, even if I talk more to them. Don't buy too much. Their laughter echoed behind me, leaving me feeling empty. But when I saw my loyal dog Ken curled up in the bedroom, I felt comfortable. You're on my side, aren't you, Ken? I muttered to myself, but he just tilted his head. With the emptiness re-emerged in my mind, I fell asleep with Ken. One day I visited Maria at her office. Because I needed her to check to see if the alternation I made on the vintage clothes she bought overseas was all right. She looked at them every corner I mended. She doesn't compromise on anything just because I am her friend. Knowing this, I always try my best to hand them in. When there are only a few items, then we meet up at a cafe and chat over coffee, but this time, I came to her office because there were so many items. There are lots of cardboard boxes piled up all over the place. It felt more like a warehouse than an office when I first came here. Her desk sat in the back, and in front of it, a table and chairs for visitors, all carefully chosen by her at antique shops. Her taste has remained unchanged since I was a student, and I have always admired it.
I think this one and this one are okay. This skirt needs a little more touch.
Having finished all the strict checks, I breathed a sigh of relief.
Did something happen?
She looked at me sharply. Oh, it's just a sigh of relief for now. I'll fix it shortly and get back to you. As if to escape her sharp gaze, I quickly stuffed those clothes that needed to be fixed into my bag.
The products you mended this time didn't quite feel like your work, Yasmin.
She handed me an envelope from her desk. It's a payment for the clothes I worked on. I can't take it because some of the items took longer, and I couldn't meet your expectations. She forced me to take the envelope into my hand, which I refused to accept.
I believe your skills haven't decreased, Yasmin. In fact, you're at a professional level. So I've also added a technical fee.
Her eyes sparkled. I knew that look. It only appears when she is fully into her work. I also know that the fact that she recognizes my skills and even gives me impeccable compensation is not just because I'm her friend.
Oh, I have something I wanted to show you.
As if deliberately ignoring my attempts to leave, she pulled something out of one of the cardboard boxes. A hand-carved horse? No, it's probably a donkey. The figurine, which could fit in the palm of my hand, was sold for tourists. At a stall in Africa.
I think you have a better taste when it comes to sundries. What do you think of this?
Well, I gave her my honest opinion. Then I evaluated one by one the sundries that come out one after another. I loved this time spent with her. Before I knew it, time had flown by. Glancing out the window, I realized it was already dusk. I'm sorry, Maria, I have to go home now. She also looked up and was surprised to see the clock in her office.
I'm sorry too for keeping you up until this late. It was helpful though. Thank you.
Waving goodbye, I hurried out of her office. Passing through the business district and down the nighttime streets, I felt a sense of longing. I remembered my dream, to have many people wear the clothes I made. I had even studied fashion design in college for that purpose. I looked out of the train window at the scenery. If I had worked for an apparel company instead of a textile manufacturer back then. If I hadn't got married, if I hadn't had children. I became mean and ended up arriving in a familiar residential area. Then I came back to reality. Forgetting about the dream I had just remembered, I hurried home. A glance at my watch showed that it was past 8 in the evening. Neither Ruby nor Kevin would be preparing their own meals. They must be waiting for me to come home. Fortunately, since they don't mind ready-made meals like bento boxes or side dishes, I dropped in at a supermarket nearby on my way home to get some groceries. Still, I'm concerned that I haven't heard anything from them. I always tell them in advance or I call them when I'm running late. Today was different. It should be the first time for me not to come home until this late without even preparing dinner. Soon after, I arrived home. Since the light on the front door was on, the two of them must be at home. Could it be they didn't think anything of my not coming home and I was the only one concerned about the time? That thought left me feeling lonely. When I opened the front door, Ken was there tied up. I always let him off leash inside the house and I wonder if they didn't let him go since he got home from a walk. He looked up at me with teary eyes and as I reached out to free Ken from his leash, I heard loud laughter coming from the living room. I got so frustrated and I made my way to the living room with him. Ken was a dog I had adopted in the first place. I met him when I visited an adoption event organized by the city council for Ruby, who wanted to have a dog. Although we left without adopting that day because she wanted a smaller, cuter dog, I couldn't forget about him, and when I made a query later that day, I heard that he was on the verge of being put down. I couldn't sit still and I adopted him. This is how he had become part of our family, and I believe both Ruby and Kevin would have welcomed him as a pet. Yet now, they were enjoying themselves while he remained being on his leash in the cold entryway, and I couldn't accept that. When I was about to enter the living room, I heard Ruby laughing and talking louder.
It's so tacky nowadays to mend used clothes and sell them again.
Perhaps she was watching TV or something. I didn't think they were talking about me, and when I heard my husband's voice next, I felt the blood drain from my body.
Maria is also quite picky, or rather she seems to be missing the point.
It seemed that they were talking about me and my friend Maria. I froze on the spot and had to listen to a conversation I'd rather avoid. Maria had influenced me to take on clothing repairs, even though my skills weren't that great. She uses me just because we are friends, even though I have no hint of the great sense in doing it. The conversation between the two of them was full of criticism about us and it made my eyes flicker. As I squatted down, Ken came and snuggled up to me. The conversation continued, talking about Ken, like he is crossbreed or old, and I heard them even considering throwing away my old sewing machine, which is a keepsake from my mother. I stood up out of the blue. Without saying a word, I took Ken with me and found myself running out of the house. Where was I going? I had no idea. Ken whimpered and sounded uneasy. Would I be able to go back home as if nothing had happened? No, there was no way I could do that. All I knew was that those two were making fun of us. I don't want to go back to the house where those two people are. I don't want to be that miserable. My feet carried me away from our house. Gradually, the scenery shifted from residential to office buildings. Walking with Ken, I felt out of place. But there was no turning back. When I reached a familiar building, I pulled out my phone and made a call.
What's wrong, Yasmin?
She was startled by my call and rushed out of the building.
I was just about to leave.
She seemed to have guessed something when she saw Ken sitting next to me. She told me to wait for a bit and disappeared back into the building. After a while, she appeared in front of me again with a large cardboard box in her arms.
Hey Ken. Can you hold out for a little while?
She stuffed him inside the cardboard box she brought with her. He is a clever boy who hardly barks, so he is quiet and did as he was told. I then went to her office and talked to her about the story I've just heard before.
Well, that's what happened.
As I talked to her, the feelings of shock and anger faded away. As expected, I began to feel restless, thinking that the two of them might have been worried about me not coming home. Ignoring my cringing, she looked at Ken, who was curled up in a cardboard box, and muttered,
If they're worried about you, they'll at least contact you.
I was in a bit of a panic and didn't catch what she said and wandered around the room, wondering what to do.
By the way, I remember you said you've installed a pet camera for Ken?
I could hear her this time, but when I looked at her face, she seemed to be kind of fed up with me. She sighed heavily and said,
If you're worried about how the two of them are doing, why don't you use that camera to check?
Without looking at me, she was petting him. I take out my phone and try to check the footage from the pet camera. But my hands were shaking, my heart was pounding so hard as if it's going to be explored, and my mind went blank. Ken, who had been enjoying her attention, suddenly darted toward me.
If you can't watch alone, shall we watch together?
I nodded a little at her and handed her my phone. She opened the pet camera app. The living room appeared on the screen. An open pizza box sat on the table, half eaten. And there, on the sofa, Ruby and Kevin were still laughing happily.
They don't seem worried about you at all.
I agreed. It was clear they hadn't even noticed that Ken and that I had left. I was shocked again, but this time I could feel the anger welling up again.
Now, what should we do from here? What do you want to do, Yasmin? Do you still want to go back to that house?
She asked me, seeming to enjoy the situation. No, I don't.
Then leave the rest to me.
Now I think about it, I never thought she was so reliable. I don't think there are many scary people like her to make an enemy of. She definitely managed my phone and showed me an unbelievable video. It was footage from a pet camera, but what was shown there was the scene of Kevin's affair.
I never expected it would be so easy to find out.
She was excited like a child who had found a fun game. She originally worked at the same company as he works. She seemed to have a connection with a colleague from that time, and heard of it from them.
I didn't pay much attention 'cause it was just a rumor. I didn't even think it was worth letting you know.
Her words added to my discomfort when I was feeling sick of the unexpected images, but they also helped me let go. I've made up my mind. Maria winked at me as if to say, "You've got to do that." The next day, I waited for a moment when neither Kevin nor Ruby were around and moved only the essentials. I received a message on my phone from Ruby. I just told her that I was staying with Maria for a while. Seeing that there was no response after the message was read. She probably doesn't think anything of my not coming home. I immediately started looking for a place where Ken and I could live, ready for a fresh start. Maria introduced me to a lawyer she knew and still looked kinda enjoying it. She was always with me when I spoke to the lawyer and provided me with key information. As I listened to her information, I found myself that my feelings towards him were starting to go away. I heard that he was messing around with a young part-time girl at the store. I heard that he was being sent from one shop to another because of it. It's no wonder he's only a shop manager for his age. I felt ashamed of myself for having spent all this time without questioning it. Although all communication with Kevin was done through a lawyer, I was really worried about Ruby. I wondered if she secretly wanted to come with me. So, when I was packing up the remaining belongings, I called out to her, who happened to be at home. "Why don't you come with me, Ruby?" She was still lying on the sofa and didn't even look at me. "Are you angry that I divorced without letting you know?" I asked her, almost crying as she didn't say anything. She shook her shoulders. I wasn't sure if she was crying or not. "Let's leave here with me," I decided. I couldn't leave my own daughter behind. Before marrying Kevin, I had already made her feel lonely by not having her biological father around. Being with me should make her happier than being with a father who is not a blood relative. When I walked up to her and tried to take her hand, she finally spoke up.
You're such a narcissist, aren't you?
I thought she had tears in her eyes, but then she bursted into laughter holding her stomach.
You really didn't know anything, did you?
Her voice filled with pity. She apparently knew about his affair. Instead of keeping quiet about it, he gave her a lot of pocket money and clothes.
Dad has already found someone to remarry.
He had been having an affair with another woman even during our divorce procedure. It makes sense that it went through without any trouble. Are you okay with that? I wondered about what she really feels. I worried about her future. To my surprise, she smiled confidently.
Dad's new partner is young, kind, and like an older sister.
She had already met the woman, and apparently she helped choose her clothes together, and they were even planning to get a small dog.
I'm sick of both the noisy clattering sewing machine and the scruffy crossbreed dog.
She knows how much that one word can hurt me. As I stood there stunned, she rubbed salt into the wounds.
Since I'm graduating soon, as long as I have money, I can live on my own, so all you need is just to support me financially, that would be enough.
She hasn't even decided what she is going to do after graduation yet. I wonder how overly optimistic she is. I wonder when I went wrong to bring you up. I'll give custody to that man, so if you want money, ask Dad. I said it coldly, as if I've lost all love for her as a mother. Despite my harsh words, she didn't flinch. Without looking back, I never set foot in that house again. I had never known myself to be so cold. I should have loved Ruby for sure. Why didn't I force myself to take her with me? That is the only thing I still regret. 5 years have passed since then. Kevin got fired and lives on a shoestring with Ruby. Since the divorce agreement ensured he wouldn't get involved with me ever again, there's no harm done to me so far. Ruby seems to be supporting him while moving from job to job after graduation. If she ever reached out to me, I'd undoubtedly give her a helping hand, but that never happened.
Hey Yasmin, you're holding back again.
She snapped me out of my thoughts. Since then, I have been officially working for her. She became much more active and her company's performance improved significantly since I became the office manager. We moved to a spacious office where I had my workspace and even a cozy corner for Ken.
I don't have kids, so I don't really know, but you're thinking of taking care of Ruby, aren't you, Yasmin?
She asked me while making coffee. She really knows me. I once asked a lawyer to try to get custody of Ruby back. But when the lawyer went to talk to her, I hesitated when I heard the voice recorder.
If you're getting rid of the sewing machine and the crossbreed dog, then I will.
It was then that I realized that I could not give up the sewing machine and Ken for her. I abandoned my daughter. For my dreams, for my beliefs. She offered me a freshly brewed coffee without saying a word. Thank you. We both sipped our coffee and went back to work. I hope one day Ruby will understand the value of these rework clothes. I keep stepping on the sewing machine with that wish in mind. How did you find this story? Please subscribe to our channel. Until next time.